the sleepy rural town of Senekal, in recent weeks the focal point of simmering racial tensions, following the death of a young farm manager, Brendan Horner. But Brendan's death is a frightening prospect for divergent rural communities here who grapple with ways to protect themselves. At the heart of it all, black and white farmers say, lies well-organized crime syndicates that grip their communities in fear. This week, we travelled to the Eastern Free State, where residents from 2 farming districts tried to come to terms with the brutal murders of 2 young and promising men.
There was 2 stab wounds, one right on the chest and the one on the lungs. So those are the 2, although he had a bit of an injury on the head and at the back. But I think according to the report that we had, those are the 2 wounds that they killed him. Yeah.
Molafi Rali from Naledi near Vicksburg in the Eastern Free State was murdered in May this year on the farm Franschhoek. He was only 24 years old. For many years, the farm was known as Rustlers Valley, and annual music festivals saw large groups of people converge here. But when the farm was destroyed in a fire in 2009, it was sold to a non-profit initiative, Earthrise Trust. The trust transferred 42 hectares of the 273 to the communities of Naledi and Franschhoek.
The community farming, based on what we do here on Naledi, I think we have the people that are working, members of the community that are involved in the cooperative. Whatever they make from there, it goes to them, nobody else. There's no middleman, so that money goes to them. But they help the community because, as we are knowing, that food is very important. So they're growing the food, the creche and the clinic, they benefit from there. If, for example, there's a funeral, it is a social responsibility of Naledi Farmers Corp to contribute towards that, so that therefore you assist the people.
Molafi and his father, we grow up together. And we are working at the mine together. That's how I know Molafi. I know his parents. And the father, while he was still on the mine, he got sick in 1995 and passed away. And the same month, her mother also passed away. That time, Molafi was only 2 years when they both passed away. And he was a friend of my last born son, Musaku. And always they were all together. When he was doing grade 5, he decided himself he want to leave, he want to stay with us at home, with Musaku. I told them that first have your education, finish your grade 12, then your path is open.
There's our Nelson Mandela Foundation, the learning, it's a crèche.
Is it a crèche? Okay.
There's our primary school there.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Oh, look at that. Molafi was a young star, also playing a role of being a leader. He also played polo at Polo Africa. He came through of the rank of Polo Africa, and he even ended up going to play in England for a while.
These young men were trained as beekeepers by Molafi and worked under his guidance.
He was called to different farmers if they want to move the bees. He will go and do that kind of jobs. But he also want to expand, to use the bees for cross-pollinations with the plants. I think that's what his mission, where he was aiming to. He had a good future, but let's look back where he started. I mean, he grew up as a child, as an orphan.
An orphan?
An orphan. He spent some time staying at Ndadejabi's place because the parents were gone. And I can tell you, the future was looking bright on him to become one of the leaders, to be one of the successful business person. I mean, he was on the right path. So he went missing. It was a Thursday, the 29th. So Thursday he disappeared, was only noticed on Sunday. of the same week. Then I asked the community, please, go and look for him. Many people went to look out for him, including the children, because the children loved him, you know. He loved the children and the children were loving him. So we found him behind this mountain where there's a hole in the mountain. It's like African mountain, beautiful area, and he was found killed at the back there. His body was found here, and his head was facing the direction. You could see there was no movement here, that, you know, like he's been struggling or whatever. He was just lying there. So we don't know, is this actually the place where they murdered him or they brought him here? Maybe they did need information on him, which we don't know, or we can only think, or maybe because he won an award, they think he had a lot of money. Maybe they kept him to, you know, when they do that, to give you the information or the pin or whatever. That's what we can think. All the house keys were still in his pocket. So it was not a matter of they want to go and steal or breaking in. If they wanted that, they could have easily done. At the moment, for me, I don't know actually where they're coming from. You know, sometimes we can say they're coming from Lesotho. Probably we look into Lesotho, but maybe they're around here, you know. He had children, yeah, with the girlfriend, that's, yeah. And then so they stay with the parents of the girlfriend.
How did you meet Molafi?
Go kopane fela je ka ne le gale bathe go kopanela ka cherisi fe re ka le kopana fela jwa
How long were you together?
Ke nahana gore le mo sene ke 11 years.
So you were young when you fell in love? What happened? When was the last time you saw him?
Ke ketetse mmonela ba ga go ne lo senga theoela ya mosebetsi.
And when did you find out that he was found?
Ke ne ke ile ka mona ka thabeng lena.
Do you have any idea what could have happened? Nothing. And your children? How do you explain to children so little?
Ke ba sebetse fe.
When you look in a community farming, I think black and white is a time now. It has been, but it's the most important time that we hold each one's hand and fight this criminal that's taking on.
I will always remember, I remember, even now, as we speak it now, I'm very sad.
Hy het 'n dik baadjie aangehad. 'n Dik baadjie. Hy's hierso, dink 3 wonde hierso. Hy het 'n wond hierso, sy linkerhand hierdeur. Dis die ergste een. En dan het hy 'n krap op sy kop gehad, maar die groot moeilikheid is hy's verwrig.
Brendan Horner was murdered in early October on the Blowcrane farm near Fourierburg. He was only 22 years old.
Hy was een van die jong manne wat handpicked is, soos 'n klomp jong manne wat hier werk. Wat ons gaan haal het. Hy was by 'n trekkeragentskap en ons het hom so van tyd tot tyd gesien en ek het baie van hom gehou en ek het vir die seuns gesê om te reël vir 'n onderhoud met hom en ons het hom fisies gaan haal en hom hiernatoe gebring. Ek ben gegroet toe sy na sy pad, dit was 6:29 en toe het hy gery die pad wat ek nou ry. Toe ry hy met daai paadjie en daar so waar hy windpomp is, dis waar die skape slaap. Toe hy nou daar kom, toe lig hy en ek dink die skaapdiewe het gedink hy het hulle gesien. Dalk het hulle nie eens gesien. So toe lig hy so, toe hy daar so kom, toe lig hy so oor dit. Okay, nou gaan ek sy pad na sy dood toe. So, hy's nou baie beweeg hierso gister. Maar die laaste geveg was hierso. Sien julle hierso? Hier het so julle so groot soos 'n pot se deksel. Was die bloed het hier gelê. En dis Ek neem aan waar hom verwrig het ook.
Weer vreeslike goed.
Toe het hulle hom gesleep met daai tou. Toe sleep hulle hom hier oor en hier waar hierdie blomme nou lê. Sien uit in die paal. Al is sy bloed nog. Sien daarso.
And it's not the first time that criminals hit Blokrain Farm. 2 workers were maimed so severely that they were medically boarded.
Hulle het so 'n huisietjie ding gehad wat hulle gebly het in 'n groot skaapkraal. So hulle het net in die nag wag gehou oor die skaap. Hulle sit daar met 'n kierie en met 'n selfgemaakte spies of wat ook al en hulle oorval. Daai een man se kop was stikkend geslaan, wangbene, kakebene omtrent vergrys. En ek dink hy was so iets soos 5 maande in 'n koma gewees. Die skaapdiewe het hulle daar gelos vir dood. Vir dood.
Brendan Horner was murdered near Fourierburg in the same district where Molafi Rali was murdered close to Vicksburg a few months earlier. A similar story of 2 young men with promising futures in South Africa's farming sector. While Molafi's killers are still at large, 2 suspects were arrested for Brendan's murder and appeared here in Senekal, a nearby rural town. One suspect has since been granted bail after the judge said that the state doesn't have a strong case against him. But it was the suspect's first court appearance in Senekal that ignited unrest. More than 1,000 farmers and their supporters converged on Senekal to show their anger against farm attacks. A group of between 30 and 50 protesters stormed the court building. A police vehicle was turned over and another set alight. It ignited simmering racial tensions, and the EFF threatened to come together for the suspect's second court appearance for what they termed to protect state assets.
In the policing precincts of Rue, the Senekal and Bethlehem, since April, we have lost 4 people. 1 farmer, 1 security, and 1 employee, and this 1 young man. So it's important that we pull all those things together so that we dispel this thing of race on the matter. So people die as people, and we must remove colors out of their faces.
Ons is nie hier om met mekaar te beklei op die stadium. Ons is hier om as 'n gemeenskap moet ons teen die rampokkers en die skelms en die moordenaars werk. Dis wat ons moet doen.
He's criminal. He's really criminal. And if there's a criminal, it needs to be dealt in that level, not to bring in to say, this is white, this is black. They all the same murdered. They've been murdered. Both of them, they've been murdered in a brutality way.
Reports point to a horrifying picture of farm attacks that go hand in hand with extreme brutality and torture.
There is across the board this brutality, including in farms. Yes, we are working, as you have asked. Yes, they are isolated, but even those people that are not isolated, who they die in the hands of husbands, die in the hands of boyfriend, is something that as South Africans will have to work on all of it.
The situation has changed. I mean, I remember even the tourism, when they come here, we said this is the safest place you can go till this happened. When we were kids, we were freely roaming around, not thinking something like this can happen to anyone. I mean, you could go and sleep, camp, nothing will happen to you. I mean, this is something else that's come lately. I mean, it's affect everybody's life. You know, people are not performing the same. Even you look at the people that are working, people that are new Molafi, people don't feel the same. The community at large don't feel the same. It is a life changer. Maybe, I don't want to call it a wake-up thing. It's a terrible thing that has happened.
Farming communities have for long been lobbying the government to recognize these attacks as a priority crime.
I was looking at the people that have been sentenced for the crime committed on the farms. We have a lot of foreign nationals, especially from neighboring countries, including Lesotho, which means we do have people that cross the border, nothing else but to commit crime.
You know, people are worried. The whole community is worried. Who's next? And we don't want that thing to happen. We don't want to see next. We have to prevent it.
A crime-fighting organization that assists struggling communities in rural areas, Memeza Community Safety, has meanwhile visited the Naledi area. But financing remains a big problem. One of the initiative's products is a panic button used from a remote-controlled device.
That small device can take up to 1,000 numbers. So can you imagine? You can put the whole village basically. That's the advantage of it. Some of them are put in schools in the rural areas so that it's a specific area which is always there.
After he was being murdered, people didn't feel safe. People were start making spears. Each home, I think they were ready. If somebody was going to attack them, then they need to defend themselves. Because the main thing is that they didn't know who murdered him, for what reason, who will be next. So I think that's why the community end up being prepared for anything.
While some communities have to resort to basic defense strategies, farmers who can afford it invest in more sophisticated security, but it comes at an enormous cost. Herkie Viljoen heads the Bethlehem Control Center that includes districts like Vicksburg and Senekal.
Ons probeer stelsels in plek kry. Die kameras, jy ons weet 68 van hierdie padkameras is tussen 2 en 3 miljoen rand wat die boere nie teenstaan in die feit dat ons 'n miljoen rand 'n maand verloor of meer as 'n miljoen rand 'n maand verloor. Is dit die tipe van geld wat ons spandeer om ons sekuriteit te versterk? En hoe ekonomies volhoubaar is hierdie proses? Verstaan jy? As ons waar eindig dit? En dit is ons bekommernis.
It was on 2 of these roadside security cameras that Brendan Horner's suspects were captured while fleeing in his bakkie following his murder.
Die bakkie het nou uitgery net by Herkie verby. Net so klein dingetjie verby. Teen die teerpad gelos met sy ligte en sy hazards aan 3/4 tank diesel. Hy het 'n 3/4 tank diesel gehad. So ons het aanvanklik gedink hulle wou dalk die bakkie gesteel het of wat ook al, maar dit gaan nie oor die bakkie. Die bakkie is dan nou daar gekry.
Stock theft remains a major problem for farming communities on all levels. Farmers believe these groups work in well-organized syndicates and that it could have played a role in the recent murders in the Eastern Free State.
They gave me really terrifying figures to say one person will lose about 1 million stock a month. That is huge.
Veediefstal in hierdie hele Oos-Vrystaat is absoluut 'n nagmerrie. Jy weet, dit is lankal buite beheer.
It's new to this community. I mean, we lost cattle and we found 4 back. And then afterwards, there was our neighbor, a white farmer also. He lost cattle, and we've been looking for them as well. It's very interesting. I realized when I asked the stock theft police to check it for us, someone who is in Limpopo.
There's an allegation to say this guy who has been arrested there 16 times, he gets out every time because he's put the police in the pocket. But this guy, these cases are withdrawn from the court, and he has been sentenced, found guilty for 4 times, which means police do take him to court. So it can't be true then that police arrest him and let him go, arrest him and let him go. Otherwise, he would not have been found guilty if he was not taken to court. It does take me aback that you will be arrested 16 times and you still have an opportunity of doing such a grave and a bad case of murder thereafter. It is on that score that we have made an issue, a cluster issue, a crime prevention cluster, rather than the police.
If one farmer give up and say, no, I cannot handle it because of this theft, then it means if one farmer goes, then it's 5 people that are going to have no income.
Police met with various stakeholders following Brendan's death, and a new rural security plan was tabled.
The problem with these plans, they don't have to be good and leave them on the shelf. They must be good and implemented. I think we need to push the implementation of the plan. It might not be 100%, but it must tell us that there is a change. It must show us some change. The change then is when people begin to feel safe.
For hundreds of farm attack victims like Brendan Horner and Molafi Rali, these measures will come too late.
We'll never rest till we find who did it.